Hi, I'm Nick Nicholson, Managing Director of the Lincoln-Sudbury Civic Orchestra, and we're here today with Pip Moss, who is a local celebrity here in Lincoln and around the area. Pip was the conductor of the orchestra for 27 plus years, and we're happy to speak to him about this 50th anniversary concert, and glad he's participating with us.
Me too. It's a real pleasure to see the orchestra prospering and to be able to be in front of an orchestra with a baton, which I've not been able to do since 2013.
The year you retired from the orchestra.
Indeed. Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about the beginnings of the orchestra and how you became the conductor.
Sure. Well, I taught in the Lincoln school system in the middle school at Brooks, and at that point, Don March was not only the director of music at Lincoln-Sudbury, but also for the Lincoln schools. And so he, in fact, I was hired by Lincoln in 1970, and he was my first supervisor in Lincoln. So we became friends, and we actually even played quartets together on occasion. He was a violin player. And I'm not sure exactly, well, we could figure it out, couldn't we? Must have been 1973, 72, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
So, so shortly into my tenure as a teacher in Lincoln, he started Civic. And he did so because at the time there was no string program at Lincoln-Sudbury at all. Mm-hmm. I went through Lincoln-Sudbury in the middle 60s, and you could play in the band, and you could sing in the choruses, but that was it for instrumental music.
Yeah.
So rather than starting a program from ground zero, he had the notion of including adults and making it a multi-generational group. Yeah. And that of course became, I think, one of the highlight characteristics of the group from the get-go. So I remember, I'm not sure what year, but I remember playing cello as a ringer in concerts with Civic. And at that point, the big auditorium hadn't been built. There was just the little theater.
Okay.
And so the concerts all happened in the gym. And they were big events. It would be like the Christmas time concert. I guess back in those days they called them the Christmas concert. And all the school groups would be there. All the choruses would be there, and the Civic Orchestra. So it was right in the program, as it were. And big audiences. I remember there was a very active Friends of the Civic Orchestra that got people to come to concerts and have dinners beforehand and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So that was my entree into it. And then I don't remember when Don retired, but at that point it was the Maggie Bossie era, and a few years after she retired, an educator named Dan Riley took over the orchestra. He was on the faculty at Lincoln-Sudbury doing band, and so he picked up the orchestra as well. There may have been some way in which the orchestra became part of the Lincoln-Sudbury program.
Maybe at that point it did.
Yeah,
because he was bona fide faculty.
Right.
That point.
Yeah, and in fact, when I conducted, I was paid a small salary as a portion of a teacher at Lincoln-Sudbury.
Yeah.
So he, after several years, left precipitously in August of whatever year it was, and Arthur Finstein, who was at that point the director of music at Lincoln-Sudbury, and I knew him because he was also director of music at Lincoln. He called me up and said, "Could you possibly just get the year started with the orchestra until we can find somebody to conduct it?" So So, as they say, the rest is history.
Yeah, 27 years later.
It's 27 years later.
They
that's
finally
right.
found your substitute.
They found someone else to take it over. I had a great time doing it. It was a fun group, nice people, and it was the presence of the kids along with the adults really made it a very special kind of musical environment. The kids gave the group kind of an energy, an excitement, energy,
Yeah.
and the adults kind of gave it a bit more stability. The adults were always extremely generous in giving prominence to the kids.
Yes.
And there was always the tradition of kids playing solos at the spring
You've
concert.
kept that tradition up.
Yep, and there were any number of parent-child combinations,
Right.
which was really great. And if you think about it, the number of kind of creative working environments that involve both parent generation and child generation is rather rare.
It's wonderful.
So it was really great.
Yeah.
And sadly, over the years in my tenure, that kind of got whittled away because, and I don't really blame. I don't blame at all the educators at Lincoln-Sudbury for wanting to have those good kids as part of their programs, but that was pretty much the motivation. And gradually, Lincoln-Sudbury retracted credit for the players, and it is true that quite a lot of the best players.
Just the credit, though, they still support us quite.
Yeah, they
nicely.
supported us in terms of space and my salary and things like that.
Yeah.
But a lot of the really best players were doing civic at least partly because it fulfilled their requirement to get into the districts and all states.
Right.
And when that was removed, that their incentive for staying with the group unfortunately decreased.
Yeah, but we've built up the organization to a point where we are attracting more people now, and
clearly
it's good. Simply because we are that combination of adult and kid, and it gives the kid an opportunity to, play the harder literature,
Absolutely.
which they would not otherwise do.
Yes, and two things on that. I'm happy to see the orchestra still tackling real literature, and that was always the way it was. That was the way Don March started it.
Yep.
And the only time that it wasn't that way, frankly, was during Dan Riley's time. They were doing a fair amount of high school, high school arrangements. Yes, sorry. But so that's it's great to see that. It's great to see the numbers of players. I have to say I hadn't really had any contact with the orchestra for 10 years since I retired in 2013. Right. So to come back and see it with so many players and positions there at rehearsals that we very often had to hire is really gratifying.
That's great.
And it's a thrill to have a number of students that were there when I was there,
former students,
that are playing.
Yeah.
And I know I hadn't seen Monica forever.
Violinist, and pianist.
Yeah, right. Because she did piano concerto with us when she was a student.
Right.
So yeah, it's a real thrill.
So I asked you to choose a piece of music to play at this concert.
Yes.
And you labored over this for a few weeks, and you finally arrived at Dvorak.
Yes.
And I remember Dvorak as a very, very strong choice in your programming.
Yes. Well, I love his symphonies.
Yeah.
And we actually did quite a pretty good number of them. We did number 5, number 6.
Yeah.
I think we did number 6 at least, maybe twice. I'm not sure.
The New World.
We also did number 8,
Yeah.
and we did the New World at least twice as well. Yeah. Yes. It's great melodies, good orchestration, plenty for everybody to do.
Yeah.
They're difficult, but not really technically It's not like playing Brahms or
Right.
Shostakovich or people like that.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
But great music still.
Yeah, great music.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And many of the students that are there have been so receptive of your return, which is great, and I'm very gratified with that.
I'm again, not to overuse the word, but I was thrilled. Yeah.
Okay. So you started off in a musical family,
I did.
and you were a cellist, and your father played at the BSO.
Yeah, my father played violin for 43 years.
Yeah, your mom was
And my mom was a piano teacher.
Yeah.
And I started with her on piano when I was 6 years old. And then when I was 8, I fell in love with the cello and became a cello student.
Yeah, cello is a warm sound. And your children, your daughter.
My daughter, Anne, is a professional soprano, brilliant singer. And I say that with no parental
Bias.
Yes. Thank you. She really is. She has a phenomenal ear and a phenomenal technique, and she's able to sing a lot of contemporary music and actually has quite a bit of it written for
You should
her.
invite her back to sing with the orchestra.
Well, absolutely, yeah. I don't know if she's home from California. She was in California over the weekend doing some sort of singing gig out there. She has roots in California since she and her husband were living out there for over a decade and a half.
Okay. Well, this all comes to a termination on June 11th, when we'll be
Right.
celebrating our 50th anniversary concert.
Not a termination for the orchestra. I mean,
No.
it comes to a head, you
It
might
comes
say.
to fruition.
Right, there you go.
And 2:30 on that Sunday.
2:30?
2:30 on Sunday, and we'll be there with our dear conductor emeritus and friend Pip. He'll be concluding the program with the Dvorak.
Yeah,
We'll be
I was
very
excited
happy.
to hear that.
Yeah.
I didn't know where I was. I figured I'd be like before the intermission or something.
No. You're the
This
head.
is great. Yeah, great.
So we welcome everyone to come.
Indeed. Yeah, it sounds like it's going to be a great. Well, I know what's on the program. I think it's going to be an exciting program
Right. Good.
and a stretch as usual.
As usual. Appalachian Springs.
Yes,
little
a challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we're happy to have you, Pip. Happy to have you back.
Well, thank you, and I can't wait.
Yeah.
I can't wait for the 11th.
Good.